A millionaire posted his mistress on Instagram. His pregnant wife filed for half his net worth. Prepare yourself for a roller coaster of deceit, betrayal, and retribution so shocking that it feels ripped from the headlines. This isn't just a cautionary tale about a cheating husband. It's the explosive story of a millionaire who flaunted his mistress on Instagram while his loyal, pregnant wife watched her once perfect world crumble. What begins as an extravagant lifestyle soon spirals into a fierce battle for dignity, identity, and half of his sprawling fortune. You'll witness jaw-dropping twists, whispered secrets, and a storm of legal warfare. Stay tuned to discover how the echoes of one scandalous post rippled into a life-altering reckoning. David Chamberlain had crafted a gilded life from humble beginnings. With an unrelenting drive, he rose from the cramped apartment he'd once shared with his struggling mother to become the CEO of an innovative tech startup that was rumored to have caught the eye of Elon Musk himself. Evolving from a small project he coded in his dorm room into a company worth billions, Chamberlain Tech soared on David's vision. In the early days, he poured every ounce of energy into building prototypes, making calls, and pitching to investors. Late-night programming sessions were fueled by microwaved ramen and potent energy drinks, symbols of the grit behind his success. He met Alicia Astor at a charity gala for underprivileged children in Silicon Valley when his star was just beginning its ascendancy. She was a university graduate in child psychology, volunteering her time to help kids from broken homes. Captivated by her warm smile and empathetic nature, David introduced himself, offering a donation that far surpassed her modest expectations. There was an immediate, genuine spark between them. She saw more than just a young, ambitious tech genius with a fat checkbook. She saw a man who could offer security, but also needed the emotional grounding her kind heart could provide. They married within a year, and Alicia, well aware of David's ambitious soul, stood by his side, supporting every bold new idea he generated. Their first child, Emily, arrived 2 years into the marriage, further cementing the narrative of a dream-come-true romance. From the outside, looking in, the Chamberlains were the epitome of modern success. Youth, glamour, money, and a philanthropic spirit that aligned perfectly with Alicia's compassionate roots. Yet, behind the picture-perfect Instagram posts lay the silent expansions of David's ego, small fissures that would one day widen into a chasm of betrayal. If there was one rule Alicia had, it was to keep personal matters private. She hated public spectacles, though comfortable attending charity galas and philanthropic events by David's side. She avoided the camera lens whenever possible. But David, fueled by the validation of his 2 million Instagram followers, increasingly viewed privacy as an obstacle to his personal brand. Where Alicia saw vulnerability, David saw an opportunity to cement his image as a self-made mogul, complete with the glamorous spouse and adorable child. Whenever a major milestone happened, closing another venture capital deal, unveiling a new product at a tech conference, David's phone was out, snapping pictures, tagging collaborators, and building a narrative of relentless triumph. Alicia, while proud of his accomplishments, sometimes felt overshadowed by it all. Often, she would get texts from friends who saw David's posts before Alicia ever heard the news. It was as if David was living in a swirling galaxy of digital applause while she remained tethered to a more grounded reality of doctor's appointments for Emily, grocery runs, and quiet evenings at home. The distance only grew when Alicia discovered she was pregnant for the second time. Although David was thrilled at first, posting a heartfelt announcement online to his followers, he soon returned to his swirling schedule of business travels, late-night coding sprints, and networking events. He was planning expansions to Chamberlain Tech's new mobile application suite, with rumored negotiations involving a major Silicon Valley investor group that had once backed Tesla. By the time Alicia reached her second trimester, David had grown so immersed in corporate life that their conversations felt more like board meetings. Her gentle pleas for him to slow down, to show up for the next ultrasound, or be present for Emily's kindergarten recital seemed to drift past him without consequence. Sabrina Rossi was as hungry for fame as David was for financial success. 23, gorgeous, and an Instagram influencer with a rapidly growing audience, Sabrina had been on the fringes of Silicon Valley's social scene for months, strategically targeting wealthy men and well-connected tech magnates. She posted pictures of her lavish vacations in Bora Bora, her decked-out condo in Miami, and the VIP parties she attended in Los Angeles. It was rumored she had once snagged an invitation to a private event hosted by the Kardashian family, though no verifiable photos ever emerged. Her approach to life was as transactional as David's approach to business. Every move had to yield benefits, be it likes, brand sponsorships, or an alliance with a millionaire capable of feeding her desired celebrity status. She appeared one evening at a tech networking event where David was the keynote speaker. Her shimmering black dress drew gazes from all corners, but her eyes were locked onto only one man, David Chamberlain. She approached him after the speech, gushing over how she admired innovators who disrupt industries and how she had always dreamed of being a tech entrepreneur if she hadn't chosen her influencer journey. The lines were cliché, but the combination of her magnetism and David's ego-laden thirst for admiration sparked an instant connection. They exchanged numbers under the pretense of possible collaboration, but Alicia's name was never mentioned. Sabrina played her part with calculated ease, and David, high on the adrenaline of success, found it exhilarating to have someone who seemed so in awe of his every word. In a life that had become a routine of board meetings and family obligations, Sabrina felt like a new technology waiting to be explored. A guilty rush danced in his veins each time he texted her, while Alicia's gentle presence at home was overshadowed by Sabrina's bold, flirtatious energy. It began, innocently enough, with coffee meetups where they discussed social media strategies for Chamberlain Tech. Sabrina had a knack for hype, and David saw potential in using her influencer status to break into younger markets. Soon, casual drinks followed. Amid the neon hum of swanky hotel bars, Sabrina's conversation steered them away from business proposals toward after-hours confessions of desire. Every time David caught a glimpse of her swirling her wine glass or laughing at his jokes with wide, admiring eyes, he felt 10 years younger, as though stepping back into a time before fatherhood and the weight of corporate responsibilities. Alicia, nearing her 6th month of pregnancy, sensed something shifting. David came home later and later, offering vague excuses about beta testing and urgent midnight calls with overseas investors. Her attempts to communicate her worries were met with weary sighs or irritability. She even tried suggesting they attend marriage counseling, but David brushed it off, insisting he was just in the busiest quarter of the year. Sabrina, shrewd about her path to the top, planted subtle seeds of tension. She would text David at odd hours with urgent crises, often expecting immediate emotional support. In truth, these crises were carefully orchestrated hooks to reel him closer, to separate him emotionally from Alicia. The more he responded, the more she gained power. And David felt conflicted. He was intellectually aware that he was doing something morally questionable, yet he rationalized it away, telling himself Alicia never seemed to understand his ambition as thoroughly as Sabrina did. In the background, Alicia's pregnancy advanced. She felt drained physically and emotionally, her maternal glow overshadowed by an unnamed dread. Late one night, she scrolled through David's Instagram feed. Among the business posts and motivational quotes, there was a new face in the background of multiple photos, a glamorous brunette with a curated aesthetic. Alicia's heart pounded, though she couldn't fully articulate why. She just knew something was terribly amiss. One chilly November evening, Alicia decided to confront David after noticing a suspicious charge on his credit card statement for a 5-star hotel suite. She was aware that some business meetings took place in posh venues, but the date coincided with an evening David was supposedly out with his development team until dawn. Summoning her courage, she asked him point-blank, "Who is Sabrina Rossi?" David froze, eyes flickering from confusion to alarm. He tried to brush it off as a business influencer, someone who had been helping him with brand collaborations. But Alicia had done her homework. She knew Sabrina's entire online presence radiated flirtation and flaunted a lifestyle built around leveraging wealthy connections. The heartbreak in Alicia's eyes threatened to break David's carefully curated composure. At first, he denied everything. He painted Alicia as irrational, blaming her hormones for conjuring illusions of betrayal. When Alicia produced screenshots, Sabrina's photos from the same hotel room on the same night, David's narrative came undone. With nowhere to hide, he lashed out. "It's not what it looks like. She's just a friend, a vital PR contact." You wouldn't understand how these things work, he insisted. Alicia couldn't believe the audacity. She demanded he cut off all contact with Sabrina and refocus on the family, especially with their unborn child on the way. David agreed in words, but his body language told another story. His phone was buzzing with new messages, even as he made empty promises. He assured Alicia it was over, that he'd made a mistake. But inwardly, he felt trapped, caught between the allure of Sabrina's excitement and the familiar, stable reality Alicia offered. As he walked away to sleep in the guest bedroom that night, Alicia was left in tears, cradling her pregnant belly, wondering how their once idyllic marriage had drifted so far off course. For several weeks, Alicia monitored David's behavior with cautious optimism, hoping he had truly severed ties. But the reality exploded on a random Sunday morning when she woke up to a barrage of text messages from friends. "Have you seen David's new Instagram post?" one read. Nervous energy gripped her chest as she tapped on the app. There, in high definition, was David on a yacht in the Caribbean, with his arm draped intimately around Sabrina. His caption read, "Finding new horizons in business and life. #blessed #entrepreneur lifestyle." Alicia's mind whirled. How could he be so brazen? Not only had David lied about cutting ties, but he had also chosen to flaunt the affair publicly. She felt a shockwave of embarrassment and betrayal, imagining what their friends, her family, and even business associates must be thinking. Calls from her parents went unanswered. She hid in the guest bathroom to sob, trying to collect herself enough to confront her husband. David returned home late that evening, wearing an expression that wavered between defiance and regret. The argument that ensued was volcanic. Alicia demanded an explanation, brandishing screenshots of comments on his Instagram post that were equal parts congratulatory and scandalous. Some followers appeared to celebrate David's freedom, while others openly shamed him for what looked like an extramarital affair. David tried to spin a half-hearted narrative about brand building and social media stunts, but it fell flat. There was no plausible excuse for the betrayal. Humiliation gave way to fury. Alicia declared she'd had enough. She could no longer stand by a man who cared more about likes and clout than his marriage and the safety of their unborn child. Storming off, she warned him that he would regret this moment, that she would take action, and that the blowback would be more than just a PR nightmare. It was the first time David truly glimpsed the magnitude of the tempest he had unleashed. The very next morning, Alicia contacted her friend Julia Price, a paralegal who worked for a prestigious law firm in downtown San Francisco. Julia, alarmed by the meltdown on social media, connected Alicia with a high-powered attorney, Evelyn Harrison, who had once represented high-profile clients such as Hollywood celebrities and top-level executives. Evelyn was known for her no-nonsense approach and her ironclad negotiations. She wasted no time laying out the path forward. "Alicia, you have every right to protect your interests," Evelyn said during their first meeting. "He's flaunting his mistress publicly. Don't let him manipulate the narrative. The court will see how irresponsible this is, especially with you carrying his child." Though Alicia felt a wave of relief, she was also terrified. She had lived in David's shadow for so long, trusting his decisions, supporting his ambitions. Now, she was about to go head-to-head with him in what could become a legal war. Evelyn explained the complexities: community property, spousal support, child support, and the potential division of David's towering net worth, estimated to be hundreds of millions, if not more, given his shares in Chamberlain Tech. David, upon learning of Alicia's consultation with a fearsome attorney, attempted to dissuade her from taking legal action. In frantic phone calls, he insisted they could work it out, or that things had been blown out of proportion. Yet, his apologies rang hollow, especially with Sabrina continuing to post cryptic Instagram stories suggesting her deepening involvement with David. Pictures of expensive gifts, cryptic references to "my love," and even rumors about her traveling to tech conferences with him. With each new social media post, Alicia's resolve hardened. She deserved respect, and she couldn't stand idly by while David flaunted Sabrina for the world to see. Evelyn's strategy was clear. They would file for divorce, aiming for half of David's net worth, plus significant child support and spousal support, a demand designed to sting enough to bring him to the negotiation table, if not to his knees. Sabrina and David seemed determined to live out their romantic fantasy under the public gaze. Sabrina posted a boomerang video of the two clinking champagne glasses, set against the backdrop of the Golden Gate Bridge. Comments poured in, some praising them for their confidence, others condemning the reckless display of infidelity. The scandal quickly surpassed the boundaries of David's personal life, bleeding into his professional sphere. Chamberlain tech employees were confused, embarrassed, and fearful about the company's future. Investors began questioning David's judgment. Did his personal recklessness hint at a lack of prudence in managing the company's direction? Journalists, ever hungry for sensational stories, clamored for interviews. Tech blogs that once lauded David as the rising star of Silicon Valley pivoted, labeling him as another cautionary tale of success gone to his head. Behind the scenes, Alicia grew increasingly anxious. She could hardly leave the house without paparazzi lurking around the gates, hoping to snap pictures of the scorned wife. She hated the sudden attention. Once a private person, she now found her name splashed on gossip websites alongside Sabrina's. She even spotted a viral TikTok dissecting the love triangle in lurid detail. Despite the onslaught, Alicia stood firm with Evelyn's legal plan. They filed a petition for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and seeking half of David's net worth on the grounds of community property. Evelyn pointed out that California was particularly unforgiving in high-stakes divorces, especially when undeniable proof of infidelity existed. Alicia was no gold digger. She was a partner who had supported David from his earliest days. If he was determined to break their vows, the law would protect her and her children's future. The press caught wind of the legal filing, turning it into front-page fodder. Hashtags like hashtag Team Alicia and hashtag Team Sabrina circulated on social media in the swirl of digital chaos. David found himself at a tipping point. Either he would reevaluate his actions and take accountability, or he would double down and risk losing everything he had worked for. In a stroke of misguided bravado, David tried to spin the scandal to his advantage. He hired a PR firm known for salvaging tarnished reputations, the same firm that once handled crises for certain Hollywood elite. Their strategy was to paint David as a misunderstood genius whose private life had been misrepresented by sensationalist media. Sabrina was coached to adopt the role of a supportive partner, someone who understood the pressures of the tech world more than Alicia supposedly ever did. The PR campaign quickly backfired. Within days, old interviews of Alicia praising David's philanthropic initiative surfaced. Clips of the couple's wedding videos spread online, showing Alicia giving a heartfelt speech about partnership and loyalty. Comment sections lit up with outrage. How could David betray such a caring spouse, especially during pregnancy? Even mainstream news outlets, which had previously lauded David's entrepreneurial achievements, highlighted the hypocrisy of his PR narrative. Sabrina's Instagram, once a glossy showcase of poolside selfies and fashionable outfits, now brimmed with a different kind of attention: accusations of home-wrecking, gold-digging, and cheap fame-chasing. Undeterred, Sabrina posted a story about her undying love for David, fueling further media frenzy. The more they tried to control the narrative, the more it slipped from their grasp. Meanwhile, Alicia maintained a dignified silence, listening to Evelyn's advice to let the legal filing speak for itself. In private, though, she battled waves of vulnerability. She worried about Emily and the unborn child, about how they'd cope with living under the microscope of national gossip. Late at night, she'd journal her fears, her heartbreak, and her anger. She reminded herself that she had moral support, not just from her close friends, but from strangers online who rallied behind her story of betrayal. The real court of public opinion was making a clear statement. David had made a catastrophic mistake, and the tide of sympathy was overwhelmingly in Alicia's favor. While David tried to salvage his crumbling public persona, his board of directors at Chamberlain Tech was far from pleased. The company's valuation was intrinsically tied to David's reputation as an innovative leader. Shareholders were uneasy. Some threatened to pull out their investments if David's personal scandal continued to overshadow the company's breakthroughs. Rumors swirled that an older, more conservative investor, rumored to be Bill Gates's former associate, was considering withdrawing a sizable chunk of capital over moral objections. During a tense emergency board meeting, David faced an onslaught of criticism. Several directors urged him to step back temporarily as CEO until the divorce and scandal could be resolved. They argued that the media circus was distracting from Chamberlain Tech's upcoming product launch, an advanced AI platform that had been in development for 2 years. David insisted his personal life would not affect the company's trajectory, but the skepticism in the room was palpable. Sabrina's presence only aggravated matters. She showed up unannounced to the company's headquarters, sharing Instagram stories from inside the lavish lobby, captioned with phrases like, "Visiting BA Empire." High-level employees were livid. Her intrusion felt invasive, disrespectful, and unprofessional. Every action Sabrina took seemed to sabotage the stability David desperately tried to preserve. Meanwhile, Alicia's legal team sensed David's vulnerability. Evelyn quietly gathered evidence of David's questionable corporate expenses, lavish gifts for Sabrina billed as business development costs. She prepared to leverage these details in negotiations, knowing that a potential scandal involving misuse of corporate funds could be the final blow. Caught in the crossfire, David grew increasingly erratic, lashing out at employees and ignoring critical deadlines. The cracks in his once impenetrable empire were becoming fissures, threatening to swallow his dreams. And all the while, the clock ticked down toward the final hearing that would determine the fate of his marriage, his fortune, and perhaps even his beloved company. While David spiraled, Alicia underwent a remarkable transformation. Forced to confront her heartbreak head-on, she found solace in therapy sessions and the support of a dedicated group of friends. She also reconnected with her college roommate, Sophia Park, who happened to be a successful lifestyle coach. Sophia spent countless hours guiding Alicia through mindful breathing, journaling exercises, and confidence-building techniques. What emerged from this emotional crucible was a stronger, more self-possessed Alicia. She recognized that the life she'd invested in, countless nights waiting for David, overshadowed by his ambitions, could be replaced by a future defined on her terms. She reevaluated her own career aspirations. Once upon a time, she dreamed of opening a holistic child development center. Now, with the possibility of a substantial divorce settlement, the dream could become a reality. Alicia also dug deeper into her philanthropic work, channeling her energy into programs for single mothers. She collaborated with local organizations to provide financial literacy workshops and prenatal care advice, sharing her own story to inspire others in similarly vulnerable positions. In an ironic twist, the sympathy wave garnered by her betrayal story turned her into a minor public figure. People gravitated to her honesty and courage. Emily, sensing her mother's resilience, responded positively, though too young to grasp the full complexity of the situation. She felt the warmth of Alicia's unwavering presence. Alicia promised herself she would protect her children from the fallout of David's decisions. If nothing else, she wanted them to see that adversity could be met with dignity. With each day, Alicia stepped out of the shadows of David's social media glow and into her own authentic light. The woman who once deferred all decisions to her husband was now making bold moves to secure her family's future. And that, more than any legal motion or viral hashtag, would be the true testament to Alicia's unbreakable spirit. Unbeknownst to David, Sabrina had her own agenda. She'd carefully documented every extravagant gift, every secret text thread, and every late-night liaison. In her phone was a treasure trove of incriminating messages, David venting about the board of directors, ranting about Alicia, even joking about misrepresenting company expenses. Sabrina understood the game. She had watched men like David unravel under the weight of hubris before, and she intended to capitalize on that unraveling. Her social media persona grew bolder. She frequently posted cryptic images, like a collage of expensive handbags tagged #ThankYouMyKing, or a screenshot of a text message from a sender labeled D, praising her beauty and worth. In direct messages to her closest friends, she bragged about having David wrapped around her finger. Yet, those same friends observed with skepticism. Some even warned her that playing with fire could lead to devastating consequences. David, blinded by infatuation, failed to see Sabrina's manipulations. He was enthralled by her compliments, the sexual chemistry, and the illusion of a life unburdened by moral obligations. Even as Chamberlain Tech wobbled under the pressure of the scandal, David clung to Sabrina like a life raft in a swirling ocean of public criticism and personal shame. One morning, an anonymous tip reached Alicia's legal team. Sabrina had approached a tabloid, offering exclusive details about David's personal life and business dealings in exchange for a hefty fee. If the story broke, it could irreparably damage David's standing, perhaps even invite regulatory scrutiny into Chamberlain Tech. Alicia felt a pang of pity for the man she once loved. However, Evelyn seized on the opportunity. "We can use this," she said. "We'll pressure David to settle the divorce terms quickly and favorably for you. Or we'll let Sabrina take him down with her next stunt." Behind the scenes, Sabrina hovered like an ominous cloud, poised to wreak chaos on both David's personal and professional worlds. It was only a matter of time before her true intentions became painfully clear, and by then, it might be too late for David to undo the damage. Alarmed by whispers that Sabrina was selling stories to the tabloids, David confronted her in a swanky penthouse suite he'd rented for their rendezvous. Eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, he demanded she explain herself. Sabrina feigned outrage, accusing him of not trusting her. She shed a few tears, flipping the script so convincingly that David felt guilty for even questioning her loyalty. Soothed by her performance, David proposed a risky move. "Let's go public officially," he said, voice trembling with desperation. He reasoned that if they controlled the narrative, they could quell the rumors. He dreamed of a fresh start, a phoenix-like rebirth from the ashes of his broken marriage. Sabrina pretended to be hesitant, letting him grovel for a moment before nodding in faux agreement. Their plan was to host a press conference announcing their love, framing it as a post-separation romance, conveniently ignoring the fact that Alicia was still pregnant with David's child and that the separation hadn't even been finalized. As they mapped out talking points and media invites, Sabrina secretly recorded the conversation. After David left, she sent snippets to her tabloid contact, ensuring the story would break with maximum sensationalism. The press conference would transform into a fiasco, one that Sabrina could exploit to boost her fame and possibly land a lucrative reality TV deal. Meanwhile, Alicia and Evelyn watched the fiasco unfold from the sidelines. They knew David was playing with fire, and Sabrina was clearly the one holding the matchbook. Evelyn calmly advised Alicia to be prepared for any outcome. "This could actually strengthen our position if David publicly humiliates himself," she noted. Alicia, torn between wanting David to face justice and mourning the demise of the man she once adored, braced herself for the storm that was about to descend. On a bright Wednesday afternoon, cameras flashed furiously as David and Sabrina took their places at a hastily assembled podium in a hotel ballroom. Journalists from tech magazines, gossip tabloids, and mainstream networks packed the room. David had envisioned a controlled, triumphant display of unity with his mistress-turned-partner. The reality was anything but controlled. From the start, reporters assaulted them with questions. "How could you betray your pregnant wife? Is it true Chamberlain Tech's new product launch is delayed because of your personal crisis? Are you aware Sabrina has been shopping stories to tabloids?" David's attempt to steer the narrative collapsed as he stumbled through a muddled speech about growth, personal freedom, and complex emotions. Sabrina tried to appear composed, batting her eyelashes innocently as if she were the victim of a cruel media game, but the barrage was relentless. Some journalists read aloud quotes attributed to a close source, detailing David's questionable corporate spending on Sabrina's lifestyle. One even mentioned the alleged text messages where David boasted about pulling the wool over his shareholders' eyes. The color drained from David's face.
Suddenly, Sabrinas phone started buzzing incessantly at the podium. She glanced at it, here as widening. A major tabloid had just leaked screenshots of her communications with David, intimate messages about funneling money through dummy accounts, disparaging remarks about the board of directors, and, worst of all, vile insults aimed at Alicia. Gasps filled the room as reporters received the leak in real time, their phones lighting up with scandalous notifications. David stuttered, stunned, as the crowd erupted in chaos. Sabrina played shocked, but the corners of her lips betrayed a slight upward curl. It was a public execution, and David had all but handed Sabrina the axe. He stumbled off the stage, ignoring Sabrina's crocodile tears, the cameras trailing him mercilessly. This was more than just a PR nightmare. It was the meltdown of David Chamberlain's life. Within hours of the disastrous press conference, Chamberlain tech stock value plummeted. Board members convened an emergency meeting, in which they voted to remove David from his role as CEO, at least temporarily, pending an internal investigation into financial misconduct. The fallout spread like wildfire, leading major investors to question whether the company had lost its innovative edge under the weight of scandal. David, feeling cornered, lashed out at Sabrina in a series of frantic text messages, accusing her of orchestrating the leak. She denied ever eating, spinning a tale of innocence and heartbreak, claiming she'd been hacked. Yet, her Instagram posts told a different story. Less than 24 hours after the press conference debacle, she posted a glamorous selfie in which she declared she was ready for new beginnings. Public speculation ran wild. Was Sabrina moving on already, or was she merely reveling in the attention? Meanwhile, Alicia quickly finalized the divorce settlement negotiations through Evelyn. Armed with a mountain of incriminating evidence, they demanded a hefty sum, an amount that would provide financial security for Alicia, Emily, and the unborn child for the rest of their lives. David was in no position to argue. His reputation was in tatters, and any prolonged legal battle would only dig him deeper into the grave he'd begun to shovel at that press conference. Privately, Alicia wrestled with a torrent of emotions. She was relieved to the justice served, but a lingering sadness flickered inside her. She recalled the days when David was still that idealistic entrepreneur, cutting away in a teeny apartment, fueled by big dreams rather than hubris. In the quiet of her bedroom, she placed a hand on her swollen belly, whispering promises of a better life for the child she was about to bring into the world, far from the chaos David had created. At a nondescript courthouse in San Francisco, David and Alicia sat across from each other, flanked by their respective legal teams. The air was tense, a swirl of unspoken apologies and irreversible choices. David wore a gaunt expression, the once-confident grin had long vanished. Alicia, too visibly pregnant, carried herself with quick poise. Evelyn presented the final agreement. Alicia would receive half of David's existing assets, a substantial monthly child support package for both Emily and the new baby, and additional spousal support for a set number of years. The division included real estate investments, stocks, and even rights to certain intellectual properties. Alicia had no intention of meddling in Chamberlain Tech's operational decisions. She would hold a meaningful financial stake in any future profits. The judge overseeing the process asked each party to confirm their acceptance. David hesitated for a moment. He glanced at Alicia, tears gathering in the corners of her eyes. He couldn't recognize the warm, loving wife who had also looked at him like he was the center of her world. Now, she wore the steely gaze of a woman who had been deeply wounded, yet refused to let that wound define her. Finally, David mumbled, "Yes, I accept." With the stroke of a pen, the judge solidified what was already a foregone conclusion. Alicia was free. David was no longer her husband, no longer the Vaterfigur she had once idealized, and for a moment, the gravity of her choices pressed down on him like an unbearable weight. Exiting the courtroom, Alicia felt an overwhelming release, as though she just emerged from a dark tunnel into sunlight. She saw no sense in gloating. She had simply claimed what was fair for her and her children. If David's downfall was a result of his hubris and Sabrina's opportunism, then so be it. Karma had a way of unfolding on its own timitable. David's life began unraveling at breakneck speed. Chamberlain Tech's board held a public announcement, naming its interim CEO, an experienced executive from a rival firm. Investors were momentarily appeased, but the long-term damage to the company's brand remained uncertain. In the days following the divorce, tabloids continued to drip-feed scandalous details from Sabrina. Audio clips surfaced of David mocking the philanthropic endeavors he also championed alongside Alicia, calling them mere PR stunts to get investors' goodwill. Text messages revealed his contempt for certain board members, labeling them dinosaurs. The drip of damaging evidence ensured Davids Reputation sank for the The financial toll was just punishing. Without access to corporate funds or stock options had lost upon his removal, David had to rely on his personal savings, which took a massive hit from the divorce settlement. He sold off luxury cars and cancelled memberships to exclusive clubs to free up cash. The sprawling suburban mansion had purchased was now a painful reminder of the family he had shattered. In a desperate attempt to salvage his ancient marriage status, David reached out to some philanthropic organizations for partnerships. None wäre interested. His Name had become radioactive, a cautionary tale of personal greed overshadowing professional brilliance. Ironically, Chamberlain Tech's new leadership as Lichtribund in the stock price on the Davids ouster was confirmed, a testament to how quickly markets can forget a fallen titan. As David scrolled through social media, he saw Alicia's new beginning, here calm smiles in pictures with Emily, the kindness of her supporters. A swirl of emotions battered him, regret, envy, longing, and an acute sense that he had become the architect of his own destruction. He had reached out for the mirage of a more exciting life, only to realize too late that he already had everything he needed. Alicia moved into a charming mid-century house perched on a quiet hillside, offering a view of San Francisco's glittering skyline. It wasn't as ostentatious as the mansion she once shared with David, but it felt infinitely more like home. Friends and family helped with the move, and Emily was thrilled to decorate her new room with pastel walls and star-shaped fairy lights.
As the weeks passed, Alicia took steps toward opening her dream child development center. She called it Bright Horizons, a nod to the promising life she intended to create for her children. The money from the divorce settlement, while substantial, was more than just a safety net. It was a springboard. She invested in a staff of educators, psychologists, and therapists, each dedicated to nurturing the cognitive and emotional growth of children. There was a modest ribbon-cutting ceremony, with local families and community leaders attending. A tech journalist who had once covered David's success story showed up to do a profile on Alicia's venture instead, a sign that people were interested in her version of success. Now, outside of work, Alicia found peace in simple joys, quiet dinners with Emily, prenatal yoga classes, and the support of close friends. Sophia visited regularly, celebrating each small victory, whether it was a successful fundraiser for Bright Horizons or simply a day where Alicia felt content. Public sympathy still poured in, handwritten letters, supportive comments on her social media posts, and even offers from other women's organizations wanting to collaborate. Alicia carefully chose her partnerships, keeping her focus on genuine impact rather than media hype. She had learned the hard way how intoxicating publicity could become. Every night before going to bed, she paused by a framed photograph of Emily and David from happier times. She allowed herself a moment to grieve the family they could have been, then turned off the lights, choosing to embrace the promise of a new tomorrow rather than the ghosts of the past. Without David's financial backing, Sabrina Rossi faced her own wave of repercussions. Her clout on social media spiked briefly after the scandal, but began to taper off once the news cycle moved on to fresher gossip. Brand sponsorships she relied on for income became scarce. Reputable companies didn't want to associate with someone so intimately tied to a scandal. She still lived off the lavish gifts David had once showered her with, but those funds dwindled quickly. Sabrina attempted to pivot her image, releasing a string of YouTube videos about self-empowerment, claiming she was a misunderstood woman who had simply fallen in love with the wrong man. The public response was tepid at best. Many saw her as a manipulator who rode David's coattails and threw him under the bus for fame. Offers to star in reality TV shows materialized, but none came with the high paychecks she had envisioned. Producers wanted drama, conflict, and scandal. Sabrina quickly realized she was only valuable to them as long as she stirred controversy. One day, she posted a tearful confession video, disclaiming she never intended to hurt Alicia or ruin a marriage. Instead of garnering sympathy, the video attracted an onslaught of sarcastic comments and memes. People questioned the sincerity of her tears. It became clear that her 15 minutes of notoriety were nearly up, and she had no stable platform to cushion her fall. She found herself paying for her own glamorous lifestyle now that David's finances were out of reach. Between credit card debt and dwindling offers, Sabrina stared at an uncertain future. In a final attempt at salvaging her influencer status, she teased a tell-all book, but the public had moved on. Interest in the David Chamberlain saga waned once the divorce concluded, and new tech dramas took center stage. What she'd hoped would be her big break had ironically become her downfall, a sobering lesson that chasing fame at any cost often ends in loneliness, debt, and irrelevance. News eventually reached David that Alicia had gone into labor. Torn between guilt and a lingering sense of paternal duty, he rushed to the hospital. He arrived awkwardly, uncertain of his place in a moment he had forfeited by his betrayal. At first, Alicia's friends and family barred him from the delivery room, but Alicia, in a gesture of compassion, allowed him a brief visit. She wanted their child to have some semblance of a father, even if he'd abandoned the family before. When he laid eyes on his newborn son, a wave of emotion nearly overwhelmed him. Tiny fingers, soft cries, a fragile new life. David felt the sharp pang of realization that he had sacrificed the joy of these moments for fleeting thrills and social media vanity. He cradled his son for a few minutes, tears blurring his vision. Alicia watched quietly, sharing in the bittersweetness of the scene. For a fleeting instant, they almost seemed like the young couple they once were, wide-eyed, hopeful, and united by love for their child. But the chasm between them was too vast. After the baby's vitals were declared stable, a nurse gently ushered David out. Alicia's family gave him cold stares, reminding him of the trust and respect he had shattered. As he left the hospital, David recognized that fatherhood, a role he had once embraced so proudly, was now conditional. If he wanted to be a part of his children's lives, he would have to rebuild their faith in him from the ground up, and there was no guarantee he'd succeed. Later that night, David walked alone along a deserted beach, the sound of crashing waves echoing his inner turmoil. He held a photo of his newborn son the nurse had printed. In that moment, he understood that while Alicia might one day forgive, she would never forget. If redemption was possible, it would require more than empty words or grand gestures. It would demand a metamorphosis of character he wasn't sure he could achieve. Weeks turned into months. David lived in a modest condo, far removed from the extravagance of his past. Chamberlain Tech had stabilized under new leadership, and while David still owned some shares, albeit reduced by the divorce settlement, his voice in the company was minimal. He spent his days consulting for smaller tech firms, picking up freelance coding jobs, and wrestling with the humiliating reality of being overshadowed by an affair that had defined him. During this period of reflection, he began attending therapy sessions. He confronted uncomfortable truths about his obsession with external validation, his fear of appearing weak, and the emptiness he felt despite his material success. Slowly, he learned to separate his identity from his net worth. For the first time in years, he wasn't chasing the next big accolade or Instagram milestone. He was simply trying to become a better man. With Alicia's cautious permission, David started visiting Emily on the weekends. He played board games with her in Alicia's new home, careful to respect boundaries. Alicia observed these interactions with a guarded heart. She recognized genuine remorse in David's eyes, but trust wasn't something that could be instantly resurrected. The newborn boy, named Oliver, was too young to comprehend the complexities of their situation. Yet, David's attempts to hold him, feed him, and change diapers were small but sincere gestures toward redemption. Though Alicia didn't waver in her decision to move on, she saw value in letting David be a father to their children.